Sean here with BaseMint Comics, and this video is going to be a Corner Box Classics. But beforehand, we're going to take a evening ride up to the comic shop to see if there's any good bedtime stories Hank can pick out for himself. So we're going to take a ride, and then when we're done with that, I'll be back here to discuss three classics from January 26th, 1982. So let's hit the trails. All right, so we're back from the bike ride to give the missus some peace and quiet. She made me tea in this I'm here for the booze Halloween mug. And now we can get into it. Let me put this down first. So Daredevil 182. It opens up with Matt kind of waking up from a dream, thinking that Elektra is alive. He basically dons the costume and is... just kind of grieving, but not accepting at this point yet. So he's off through the city, basically trying to look for her, or possibly anyone knows, kind of coming up with any excuse in his head as to like how this could be all like a scheme to get to him, and that she's not actually dead. In the issue, there deals with a little bit of the Frank Castle is in prison, and so he kind of gets attacked by some people while he's in the showers and pulls the old Rorschach in Watchmen, the I'm not trapped in here with you, you're trapped in here with me, and takes care of those fellas. Then gets a visit from a guy who is basically like, hey, you kind of need to be out on the streets doing your thing, and there's some drug runners going down, so we're gonna arrange a breakout for you so that you can go take care of this for us. And so that's kind of where Frank is at in the issue. Heather Glenn is dealing with not realizing that the board for her father's company is trying to oust her in the hopes that they can take over the company. So she kind of leaves this meeting, like, unaware that they're kind of out after her, and winds up showing up to Matt and Foggy's office to visit with him. But Matt is there at this current point, just basically trying to, like, he's basically like talking to Becky, and is like, hey, we got to look into this Elektra thing because she's alive. And Becky's like, she's not alive. And so Matt starts to go into like, records can be changed, like Foggy, even though he saw the body, like he hasn't seen her in years, so how is he going to be able to recognize her, blah, blah, blah. And they've got another, like Foggy is at the moment, like bringing in a client that is actually paying them and not doing the pro bono thing. And so Heather shows up at the same time, and she overhears Matt talking about Elektra, and she's kind of upset about this, which is a little like, he's talking about a case, like I don't know, she seems a little but then Foggy shows up with the client, and she is like clearly, like, as this spat is going on, like she's clearly shocked when she hears Matt talking about a corpse, and Heather Glenn is like, "Who's Elektra?" and kind of going off on Matt, and it's an overall kind of upsetting scene. So Foggy is like, "Hey, we've got to deal with some stuff here. Can you just kind of wait in the lobby?" And in this really beautiful panel here, you kind of see, like, you know, Foggy's like, "Matt, have you lost your mind?" And then in the rest of the page, which is beautifully done by Miller, you see Matt admit that he doesn't know, and the shock look on Foggy and Becky's face in this realization. Cuts back to the prison where Turk and a buddy of his are using the best of the Frank escape plan. Like, they're getting out of there, but it just so happens, like, this is Turk's luck in all of the Daredevil comics, that he is breaking out of prison with a pal of his at the exact same time that, like, this prison break is manufactured for Frank to get out of prison. So, like, the buddy of Turk's is like, "You know what? I'm good. I'm getting meals in here, and, like, it's warm. I'm just going to stick around." Turk takes off, and there's a chopper that's picked up Frank, and Frank winds up cutting the ladder loose with Turk on it over the water. Then we get some great Daredevil going to see Kingpin and beating the crap out of some thugs to basically question Kingpin about Elektra, and, like, this, like, Kingpin was actually, like, meeting with a bunch of people about Kingpin type of things, and realizes in this moment that this is, like, this great opportunity because Daredevil is chasing phantoms, as he says. So he's kind of like, Daredevil's not at the top of his game because he is doing this, like, chasing down this dead ex-girlfriend of his. So we don't have to worry about Daredevil right now. Foggy is woken up in the middle of the night because Matt has requested that Elektra's body be exhumed. So he gets pissed off about this, rightfully so, and goes to deal with Matt in that regard. Frank is now at where this drug deal or whatever was going down. So he goes to take out these guys, and a kid tries to, a person tries to surrender. Punisher does not take prisoners, and so he winds up shooting a kid, which then really pisses Frank off. And then this already super sad, kind of morbid issue closes with Matt digging up Elektra's coffin and absolutely losing his mind when he touches her face and finally accepts that Elektra is gone. So if the cover is any indication, this is an incredibly sad issue of Daredevil, obviously. However, while I was reading this issue, there was this Marvel Supermart ad that has, like, a listing of a bunch of comic book shops. And right here in Michigan, there are two. One was Comics Archives, which I was excited to see. This is like a little personal thing for me that I got jazzed about. Comics Archives was listed in there, which was a great shop in our area that I went to all the time. A good chunk of my Uncanny X-Men issues were purchased there relatively cheaply because Comics Archives was good for that. Maybe that's why they're not around. But I took full advantage of cheap back issues when I was there. And then I got even more excited because the next store that is listed was the Classic Movie and Comic Center. And that was right down the road from my grandparents' house. And also, like, I eventually, like, my parents wound up taking over that house when I was a kid. And so I would walk to Classic and bike to Classic all the time. And if you watched the obviously this is called BaseMint Comics because my comics are in my basement. But the MINT part, I know it's like a play on words of, like, you want your comics to be mint, but I actually don't really care about that. I just want to be able to read them. And but the mint, if you watch the first episode of the show, is actually there was a a fellow who worked at Classic Movie and Comic Center and worked at another shop that I went to for years, who was a very near and dear friend to me. His name was Denny. And all of my friends that are pals in the comic circle that we're in, he was like a legend. He passed away last year, and we're still all very affected by this. I'm bummed out about this. I think about him all the time, and you know, he was a huge part of our comic scene in this town, and his nickname was Mr. Mint, and that is why I chose to call it like BaseMint Comics, was a little bit of an honoring of him. So always excited when I see stuff that kind of reminds me of home in comics. So it was nice to see the classic shout out in that issue of Daredevil. That was like, it was a sad issue, but when I got to that, I was like, it made me think of, you know, memories of Comics Archives and Classic Comic and Movie Center, because I have great memories at both of those shops. So, yeah, so that was the Daredevil issue. It was awesome, as you would expect. I wore this Alison Blair, Taylor Swift homage shirt specifically because I am about to talk about Dazzler number 15, Private Eyes, like a Hall & Oates tune, released January 26, 1982, written by Danny Fingeroth, penciled by Frank Springer, inked by Vince Coletta. Letters are by Janice Chang, and colors are by Don Warfield. And this issue, like, I really, really do, like, genuinely know, like, pretense, no, like, hipster, like, oh, I like this because other people, because it's like, I genuinely adore this Dazzler run of books. This is probably my third or fourth time reading through it in its entirety, and I just think it's great. So Dazzler is on tour with her band. They are opening up for Bruce. I cannot think of his last name at the moment. But what's hilarious, Bruce Harris. But what's hilarious is it opens up with them playing this show. Everything's going great. And like, people have crossed out Bruce's name and written Dazzler, and she's the opener. So like, obviously, like, that does not bode well. Headliners do not like openers to be better than them. That is not good. So then, like, Dazzler gets a phone call from Ken. He is a lawyer that she met post-breakup from a doctor. This is very soap opera, but I love soap operas in comics. So she gets a phone call from Ken, who is a lawyer who helped her get off a murder charge because she, like, sound waved Claw out of existence at Project Pegasus. If you go back through the Corner Box Classics, I discussed this. And so she's kind of going through, like, you know, issues with her. She's chatting with him, but kind of thinking about the breakup with the doctor boyfriend, issues with her father, because she found this brooch that belonged to her mother, and when her dad saw it, and they were already kind of not in the best of states, he kind of flipped out about this. And right as she's thinking about this, Ken gets another phone call, so he's got to go. And she looks out the window, and she sees a van with the same, that's the brooch. So she's like, what? And so she calls, she finds her mom's name in the phone book, but it turns out to be a younger gal. So she's like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'm in San Francisco. I'm on tour. So I will reach out to San Francisco's private investigator, Jessica Drew. So she does. She goes to visit her. Jessica Drew gives her kind of the brush off. And every time that I read Dazzler, I wonder if Frank Springer has some background in like lingerie art from back in the day, because he is legitimately like always drawing Allison in that, or she's always slipping into the shower. And then even Jessica Drew is changing out of her, like, so I'm just like, dude must, like, his art background must be underwear models. That's my only guess. So she goes to Jessica Drew after their 19 costume changes, or outfit changes, tells her about the brooch, gives her kind of the story, and Jessica basically gives her the brush off, which sort of sucks, not gonna lie. So Jessica does her best to kind of investigate it, but Allison realizes like she's not really giving this her all. So she sort of goes to investigate it kind of at the same time. And eventually the two cross paths. Like Jessica is done up in her Spider-Woman outfit, and Allison is investigating where this like van with this weird heart/winged thing is. Oh, there's Comics Archives and Classic Movie and Comic Center again. Awesome. So they get some dogs sicked on them while they're running through this building that they shouldn't be in, investigating where this leads to. And then in typical, like, this is like then it's like they're trapped in this building, and then water starts filling in, and Jessica then realizes that like Allison has powers in this. Then they get out of the water thing, then they get gassed. Allison's over here tearing off the bottom of her shirt to make a mask so she doesn't get knocked out, and they get attacked by these robot guys. And this is all to find out after they've defeated this and gotten out of the building that it was like a defunct SHIELD headquarters, and that's what the building was. So like nothing at the moment to do with Allison's mom, but just an old so this was the thing that I liked as an X-Men guy. So it was a training course for new SHIELD agents, was like what they were kind of going through. And it was designed by Professor Xavier based off the models of the Danger Room. So, you know, that's cool. So that was Dazzler number 15, which was, you know, a fun, like, you know, Dazzler and Spider-Woman team up. So the final book of this week is Marvel 2-in-1 number 87, Menace of the Micro-World, released January 26th, 1982, written by Tom DeFalco, with beautiful art by Ron Wilson, inks by Chick Stone, lettered by Rick Parker and Michael Higgins, and colored by Christy Scheel. I met Rick Parker earlier this year, and he was an absolute gentleman at the con I was at, and was very nice to Henry. Signed some Spider-Man and won my all-time favorite cover of Uncanny X-Men. He lettered that was the one issue of Uncanny X-Men that he lettered. So he shared a fun story about how he told me that he lettered his ass off on that issue to try to get the book, because he was like, it's the Uncanny X-Men, like, of course, you know. And I can attest after reading that issue hundreds of times that he did, in fact, letter his ass off. So the thing is as most Marvel 2-in-1s open up, the poor thing is having to deal with Reed Richards, like creating some type of new machine, or Ben's got to move it around, or some other crap like that. It's like reading the old Tales of Suspense, Strange Tales, one of the early, like, I mixed it in with the early 60s Fantastic Four things, because a buddy of mine sold me a trade of that because he didn't like it. And I joked about how in those issues, it was mostly like Human Torch stories. It was almost like a Human Torch solo series that kind of ran concurrently with Fantastic Four in the 60s. But I kid you not, those early 60s Fantastic Four issues, and hang on one sec, let me figure out what this is. Okay, here it is. Strange Tales, Human Torch, and the Thing, collecting Strange Tales 101 through 134, and annual number 2. So my buddy, who wanted me to do this the other way that I mentioned earlier in the video, gave me this, or might have, yeah, I think he just gave it to me, because it wasn't, you know, wasn't his cup of tea. And so as I was reading this to try to catch back up, like read all this while I was still reading Fantastic Four at the same time, and it felt like every single issue, Johnny was fighting someone that was made of asbestos or somehow defeated by an asbestos suit or an asbestos bad guy. And I was convinced at one point that if I had taken a drinking game while I was doing this, and every time Johnny got defeated by asbestos, if I had taken a shot, I would have died of alcohol poisoning like 3 issues into that Strange Tales series. So happy to read it, happy to have it in my collection, but not necessarily a bunch of stories that I go back to. Anyways, so that's Marvel 2-in-1's thing, is like every issue opens up with a thing being like, "Jeez, Reed," and having to move stuff around for him. So all of a sudden, Ben's about to take a cigar break, and then he gets shrunk down into a microscopic world. How, we don't know. And then Reed kind of gives an explanation of like, hey, I'd love to reach out to Hank Pym, but I can't because, in current issues of Avengers, he's like on trial and kind of a bad guy and going through some things. So they can't reach out to him. Then it cuts to Scott Lang's house, and I will admit, my knowledge of Scott Lang stemmed mostly from like the tail end of Avengers, when he was like killed, when Wanda went crazy, and the Fantastic Ant-Man movies. And I like the third one. I don't care what anybody says. I thought it was super fun. I mean, I get it wasn't like the heist movie like the first two, and lost a little bit of that charm, but the sci-fi aspect of it I really enjoyed. Like all the little aliens in the microverse world. I thought that was fun. Anyways, I'm losing it. One of the things that I have found that I enjoy immensely out of Iron Man and all of this reading is getting to know comic book Scott and Cassie Lang much more, because it is a dynamic that I thoroughly enjoy. And one of the gags that has been going on in Iron Man and Marvel Team Up, or Marvel 2-in-1, every time Scott's in there, is that like he's a single dad. It's almost like a sitcom. Like he's a single dad who's a superhero, and his daughter makes weird stuff for dinner, like marshmallow and cookie pot pies. Like she's a weirdo, and I love it. She's got a kiss pennant in her, which is awesome. Like, way to go, Cassie. And so she's trying to clean her room, and then she notices all these ants, and she's like, where are all these ants coming from? And Scott's like, it's probably for me. So he gets rid of her, sends her over to his sister's house to babysit, and then switches into his Ant-Man gear, and he's off. So he goes to visit the Fantastic Four, and then Reed is like, hey man, you can get ant size, but you can get like super ant size and super microscopic, and you can wind up in this microscopic world. And so Scott's like, I'm going to trust Reed Richards, but I've never done this before. And so he does, gets shrunk down, and winds up in, like a microscopic little castle medieval world. And he stumbles upon Thing, who's like hanging out with a bunch of chicks and eating grapes and drinking wine and having a great time, and doesn't really want to be taken away. And you slowly learn that, like, there's 2 warring factions going on in this microscopic world. Hank gets sent to a room which kind of reminds him of a prison cell, and so he's a little skeptical about all this. And they've got some fruit like Thing was eating in his room, and he's like, nah, I'm good. And has a computer screen, and the bad guys are kind of watching him on this, but Scott is, he's working for Stark International, and he's got a handle on this, so he quickly dismantles this thing, figures out that these are bad guys, and that the fruit is actually drugging the Thing into kind of this lackadaisical, like going with the flow type of vibe. And so Scott sort of figures all of this out, and when the guards come in to get him, he hitches a ride on the guy's boots, which is awesome. Like, perfect way to use Scott Lang in this. So, this issue is basically like, Thing is going out into this battle to face off against one of the other microscopic world like champion, and it eventually winds up that Scott and Thing team up and realize that, like, you know, they gotta get these two groups of people working together. So these little two microscopic communities or whatever that have been warring finally get to a truce. And basically Scott and Ben leave, and they're like, do you think the truce is going to last? And they're like, who knows? Maybe, but it's the best we can do. And so this is just a like fun little, like, it's totally worth the price of admission for Scott Lang tiny hijinks alone. So that was the Cornerbox Classics for January 26th, 1982. That was the final week. Those would have been, if I had pedaled up to a shop in the dead of winter in January 1982, those would have been the 3 books that I would have picked up, and I would have enjoyed those in 1982 as much as I did now. And today, when we pedaled up to the shop, the book that you could see Hank carrying as he waved goodbye to his pals at the comic book shop was The Mighty Thor, number 298. Because what kid doesn't want a bedtime story of Thor taking on some fire-breathing dragon? That looks awesome. Have I read this? No. Are we going to read it? Yes. Is there possibly going to be a nightmare involved? Sure. Is it going to be Hank or me? Only time will tell. But that's what we grabbed when we went up to the shop today. A fun Thor issue, number 298. So that is, maybe I'll talk about it, maybe I won't. I'm already past the 290s. I mean, I'm going to read it, but I don't know if I'm going to bore everybody with my thoughts on, I mean, come on. Thor versus a fire-breathing dragon. That's awesome. So that is Cornerbox Classics for this week. Well, I mean, kind of do these on a weird schedule, but I try to do a different thing with the Wednesday video, where I didn't talk about Cornerbox Classics and I actually talked about new books as opposed to just showing off what I got and never mentioning it again. So if you have been along for the ride and checking these videos out, I would truly appreciate it if you would subscribe. That'd be cool. And if you have any thoughts on any of these issues, if you prefer the other way that I used to do the Cornerbox Classics, because I'm still kind of field testing this, the channel's only like a month old, and I'm just trying to, like, if you don't want to see my mug while I'm talking about the Cornerbox Classics and you want me to flip through the whole issue, I can go back to that. And maybe sometimes I'll do a little bit of both, just depending on what. Today, I felt like you got to see all of this. So let me know what you prefer. Like, comment, subscribe. It would be appreciated. I'm surprised I've got as many subscriptions as I've got right now, to be completely honest. This whole thing was just meant so I could talk to a camera about comic books instead of, you know, bugging my poor wife about it all the time. She always laughs about this one time I was post-surgery, all hopped up on some very strong medication. And when we got home, I explained the Summers family tree by busting out action figures and, like, going through the whole thing. She thought it was hilarious because, I mean, I was on drugs. But that one gets brought up. She actually, I will give her this. She actually she read the Krakoan era of X-Men, which is sort of like, it's weird for me because I enjoyed aspects of the Krakoan era, but there is so much more wonderful stuff that she could have read, because some of that editorial got involved and drew it out and it expanded, and it's a bummer. And I'm way off topic now, and this is going to happen. This is going to happen a lot. So buckle up if you're a subscriber. So thanks for tagging along for this, for our ride up to the shop to pick up some stuff that's sure to give my kids some nightmares. And thanks for listening to me babble about 3 fun comics from 1982. So I will see you with whatever the next video is going to be. Who knows? I'm just coming up with it off the top of my head. All right. I got to wrap this up. This is what tea does to me. All right. See you in the next video. Thanks for taking this ride with us.